Let's introduce our two guests, ladies in the studio. Ednah Ochieng is a youth and community leader, a feminist and activist. She joins us in the studio alongside Dr. Agoy Lois Faith, who is a professional in human resource. Ladies, good morning and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here. We are celebrating International Women's Day. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is breaking the bias, and we'll have therefore conversations surrounding breaking the bias and trying to understand what breaking the bias is all about and our own interpretations of breaking the bias. What biases are these that we're breaking? But let's get to understand and know you better. Dr. Agoy, you are an HR practitioner.
Yes.
Where do you practice?
I'm a human resource consultant. At the same time, I'm also a businesswoman, so I do relate with people a lot. I'm also a politician. Yes.
And so you also do relate with people a lot?
Yes, I do relate with people a lot, especially also matters concerning women. I have a lot of interest in that.
Okay.
Yes.
Last week we had a guest here and he introduced himself as a politician, and we asked him, what exactly do you mean when you say you're a politician?
When you say you're a politician, it means maybe you have an ambition to become one in different fields. You can be a politician as if you want to serve directly in parliament or any other level. Mm-hmm. Also, you can be a politician just as an advisor. You don't need to be maybe in parliament or any other position. You can serve as a politician by also supporting other politicians with ideas.
So it's being politically active.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ednah, what do you do? Youth and community leader, feminist, activist?
Most of the time I'm in the community and I work from Kebera to global communities, and that is my office. So my work every single day is to empower women and young people. And when I talk about young people, I'm always specific about young women because they have different issues and their issues are dynamic, and so many people don't relate with what they face every single day in the community. Again, I'm also a politician. As a feminist, I believe that we need to politicize everything because everything in this country, in the world, is political. So we need to talk about politics in grassroots community. I'm also a peace builder because we will never miss to talk about development, and when we speak about development, then we need peaceful community. Yeah.
There's always been a debate about the meaning of the word feminist. Who's a feminist?
A feminist is a woman who is challenging a status quo or any other person who feels like we want change in the community and they're doing something to change. Fighting retrogressive cultures every single day, like FGM, forced child marriage, and forced wife inheritance, talking about sexual and gender-based violence. And this is where I come from because personally I'm a survivor of sexual and gender-based violence. And feminist approach has really given me a space to amplify my voice and also fight for our dignity as women.
There's something I'd like to ask. Is it possible for a man to be a feminist?
Yeah, I've met men who are feminists, but personally, I believe that men can become allies of feminism because of the different issues that we face. And I will speak about sexual and reproductive health issues, and going back to maternal health issues and menstruation health and management, because most of the men don't experience that, but as women, we experience that. So when I talk about these issues, she'll relate with me, she's going to relate with me easily. Yeah.
So we're going to another International Women's Day 2022, and now we're talking about breaking the bias. And the thing is, okay, so there are many biases that, still are existent in our world today. Have we been able, or has the fight been adequately fought to the point whereby we can say we've done the groundwork, everything has been done, and we can now say start to break those ceilings, start to let those things come about? Or is there still more foundational work that needs to be done?
Indeed, a lot of things need to be done concerning the women, especially our rights as women in this country. We are still very much behind. When you look at how women are treated in leadership, they're not given the same space as men. And mostly when you look at women on higher profile, maybe those on higher profile leadership, most of the time they'll meet so many challenges and wars. And at the end of the time, you realize they'll get so much discrimination and their positions will be taken away. And not a woman will be replaced there, but a man will be replaced there. So we need something to be done about the biasness on women, especially in the high level of profile leadership. And at the same time, even down there, you look at, for example, in the villages, when they want to give appointments, like, for example, of chiefs, administration, they'll always prefer a man to a woman, even when the woman has the qualification. So you realize the world has changed today. Women have better qualifications even, sometimes better than men. But they always will feel like men have a higher upper hand. And they'll always be biased on the women. And when you also look at most of the issues, like in the political field, a woman will vie on the same seat as a man. But the treatment will be quite different. When a woman goes to speak, the way some people treat her, they look at her more of a person who doesn't have moral ground. But a man will be given the dignity, honor of enjoying the political field. But when it comes to a woman, there'll be so much resistance, biasness, and then you realize at one point there'll be a lot of implications. Some women will end up even losing their marriages. And it becomes so difficult for a woman to be in leadership. So there'll be a lot of things that need to be addressed in this country to ensure that the women in this country can enjoy equal opportunities in leadership. Also in the political field, like us, we are going to have our election very soon. How are we giving the platform to our women to enjoy equal grounds as our men? Yes.
What needs to be done then to level that playing field, especially now for you, when you talk about women in leadership and political leadership, and you've basically implied that the playing field is not level.
No.
So what do we need to see done? What would you like to see done?
First of all, mostly I think the government needs to do a lot of, or sponsor a lot of education to our people, especially the men, to understand that currently things have changed. And we need more women in leadership than previously, both locally and internationally. And if we do not support our women into leadership seats, we are going to lag behind as a country. If you look at the last parliament, there was a percentage of seats that was supposed to be given to women, which was not done up to now. So we cannot say that we are not being biased to the women.
But you say it's men. Why do you say it's men who need to be sensitized?
Most of the time, it is them holding on the seats. Like, what can you say about the last parliament when there was a percentage of women seats were supposed to be released? They were not.
But why isn't it that the population of Kenya elected
Yes.
more women? Why didn't we have more women vie for seats?
Because of the fear. A lot of violence on women, humiliation. There's so much hostility on women that makes them shy off from even the political field. And unless something is done, we cannot get so many women getting the confidence to go to the political field. Yes.
It sounds like we've talked about this for a very long time, right? I mean, it's been years on years of having this same conversation.
Yeah.
And the question always is, look, if women are presenting themselves for positions of leadership, then why is the population not choosing them?
Why can't
Why? Because if people go to vote, and we say that even if the playing field was made level, why are we not seeing that once a woman stands against a man put in a political competition, for example, that then they are not being selected in as wide numbers as they are presenting themselves?
I do feel, if you look back, the energy we put in girl child empowerment during sensitization, like stopping circumcision for women, there was a lot of training, a lot of resources put in to make sure that people could understand that that was a negative thing for the girl child and for a woman. Why can't they put in the same effort to train people, the richer place, and understand that this is not right? I feel that people have not been empowered with enough knowledge to understand that women need to be in power. Yes.
For me, this is a conversation that needs to continue every single day, not only in radio, but everywhere. because we can also look at what is happening around the country, plus also going back to the Constitution 2010, whereby we have affirmative action and also we have matters of accelerating gender equality. But the reality is these things are not implemented in the local communities and even at national level of this country. Then there is a essence of just promoting all these issues and also empowering our community to understand the importance of female leadership. Where I come from, I'm looking at the cultures that has really bad women to get into this leadership position. But women like me, women like her, and maybe women like you are not taken in this society. We already discriminated because we are pushing for an agenda that will liberate women, agenda that will bring women to an equal position as men. And right now, when we speak about women empowerment, you'll even hear so many men say, what about the boy child? Women are still left behind. The gender disparity in this country and globally is really huge. And we need to speak about this conversation. I'm a mother and I'm a feminist mother. So when I'm raising my children, I need them to understand there is a difference. And you need to be also unapologetically when you are pushing about these issues. Because personally, every single day when we are pushing about these issues, I face a lot of biasness. I face a lot of discrimination. Nimeitwa ule mde mbaya, ule mama mbaya, because working on a very hostile community in Kibera, whereby so many people are violent against women, I'll experience all this violence. And so many men will even profile me negatively because I want to see change. Like every day, cases are reported personally to me on my phone. Like jana nilipigwa na bwanangu, saini saa 5 ya usiku, sina pali naezenda kulala, ndiye aliniacha njaa siku 5, bwana hataki mimi niende kazi, nabaki nyumbani na watoto. So all such issues, it means that our communities are not empowered enough to understand women are supposed to be leaders, women are supposed to go to work, women can be in decision-making tables, women can push for peace in the community. So last year, during Paris on Generation Equality Forum, our president dedicated himself on matters of ending gender-based violence in 2026 and ending FGM in 2022. Where are we as a country? Do we have accountability? Who is in the system that is pushing for all these matters to end and we can reach sustainable development goal, especially goal number 5? Yeah.
You know, when you have these conversations with women, do you have forums where you also include men in the conversations? Because if men seem to be the main perpetrators, this is the first bit of my question. The second bit I'm going to ask. Don't you think men would also be better informed if they actually heard and listened and understood the things that you tell women and which they understand?
That is exactly true, and that's what I said. The effort we use to educate our men on stopping circumcision of women is the same thing we need to do by involving our men in this matter, to educate them and make them understand that women, when they're women in leadership and in the positions they serve, they're going to make things change in a bigger way. If we don't involve our men in the sensitization and talk about the issue of women and as women alone, there'll not be much impact on the ground. Because if when you look at our community, the men are in charge, both in our culture. They are the frontliners, are the leaders in the communities. So for us to have change, we must first of all involve our men to accept the change and realize that it's time they should also try to talk to their communities to ensure that the women are treated on level. Of course, we cannot be 100% on equal ground, but they can give a women the opportunity to serve and see our country grow. You can see, like Tanzania, already we are having a woman as a leader, and soon we will have other countries follow suit. So we cannot also, as a country, Kenya, reach that level unless we accept.
Dr. Goy,
yes.
I'm going to have to challenge you on that one.
Yes.
Not because I don't think that women can be leaders right across this, let's say, East and Central Africa.
Yeah.
We have a female president in Ethiopia, just so that we understand. So women in leadership have been tested, tried, and have been found to be excellent leaders.
Yes.
But the second bit of my question is, there are those who are of the view that the biggest hindrance to the so-called emancipation of women are women themselves.
Do you know there are some women who are so much also drowned in their cultures? And the culture, they don't believe on fellow women leading. So many of our African cultures, we are trained to be under the men. So it's both the women and the men who need that education to understand that we need women in leadership, and things have changed. There are some cultures we will have to drop. And these some of the things that we cannot do alone and say we can do it only as women sensitization, but both men and women need the knowledge. Men are fathers to the girls, and also the same time the women are also mothers. So both these two must join forces to ensure we educate our community, our children, our relatives to understand that things have changed. We need the girl-child knowledge in the leadership of this country.
Editha, you work in the community, and in all this work that you do in the community, I just want to ask you the same question. Do you involve men equally as you involve women? And I'm saying equally because I get a sense that there are very many of the feminist organizations that focus their attention on addressing the men to understand and to accept, and assuming that the women have accepted. Do you engage the women?
We engage both men and women, but at the same time, I give my energy most of the time towards women, and this one is deliberate. Looking at the environment and the background that I came from, at even 30 years old, when you come to Kibera, women don't have self-esteem. So we need to make women to get that they need self-esteem, self-confidence, voice to speak on issues, a voice to get into activism to defend women's rights. So most of the time I'll work with the women, but at the same time I work also with men, because when I'm doing community matters like peace building, when I'm doing resilience issues, then also I need to bring men alongside. But all in all, our organization, our community-based organization, when we work in the community, I'll bring my brothers, I'll bring my siblings, I'll bring even my father and even my male relatives. This is something that we've spoken about. I'm here today because of my father. The small office that we have in Kibera, inside Kisumundogo village, was donated with my father, because my father saw our advocacy alongside. We used to work by the road, we used to do our meetings by the road, we used to push for our agendas by the road, and then my father donated that small office to us, and we're running our things. So yes, I also agree if we involve men, and believe me, my father used to follow these retrogressive cultures until now he saw that we need to make a difference. We need to get into a new step, and just supporting us. So yes, we need to involve men in all sectors.
A question here. You said that from your experience, very many young ladies in Kibera, in that community, don't have self-esteem.
Most.
Would you say the same of their mothers and their aunties?
Yeah, confidently. I would love to talk about myself because today is our day, and I'm part of this International Women's Day. My mother was a Standard 7 dropout, and my mother had 10 kids when she was already at 22 years old. And it tells you she didn't go to school, she was married at tender age, and she was not empowered. So when she was raising us, she raised us the same way she was raised. And at some point, she was even arguing with my father like, no, they are girls, they are going to get married. And my father was, no, I want to take all my children to school. And because we had that kind of a father who loved education and also who believed in us partially. So when we are not confident as women, you are going to raise your children the same way you are raised.
Your children?
Yeah.
Both boys and girls?
Both boys and girls.
Okay. So this is the point I'm driving at. That both boys and girls, children, are raised, mostly they spend a lot of their time, their formative years, with their mothers.
Yes.
And therefore the mothers are the main influencers of how they see society or how they see life.
Yeah.
So when we say that they get to a certain point and then the men are the ones who are, very patriarchal, they're the ones who are pushing against, they're the ones who are against empowerment, who influenced them that way?
And that's what I said. Most of our women were affected by their cultural background because they trained their children that mostly women are supposed to be submissively under men. So that's why the women need to be also sensitized, taught that things have also changed, and the same to men. So it's not a one way that we only concentrate on training also women alone or training also men. It's both people need the education to realize things have changed. In those days, women never used to go to school, or they used to get basic education, then get married. But right now, you realize girls have a lot of education, some of them even more than even the men. So the way things are right now, you cannot treat the situation right now as it was previously.
So is the bias being broken?
It isn't, because of there's still that generational gap. When you look at our parents, who still believe in our cultures, who still control the community, they need to be also talked to understand. They need to stop the way they used to think and accept that the world has changed. Things can no longer run the way they used to run previously. This is a new generation.
City.
Yes.
Please hold that thought.
Oh, it's that time, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It is 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Happy International Women's Day to everybody who's tuned in this morning on SpiceFM and online on YouTube and Facebook, where we are live streaming the show. It's Breaking the Bias. That's the theme of this year's International Women's Day. That's a conversation that we are having in the studio. What do we mean when we say breaking the bias? Joining us is Dr. Agoy Lois Faith. She's a professional in HR. She's also a politician. She'll tell us where she wants to vie this year for any political seat. Editor Ochieng is a youth community leader, feminist, and activist, also here with us in the studio. Time for us to take this quick break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
Spice.
The conversation continues. Women's Day, Breaking the Bias. Our guests, Dr. Agoy Lois Faith and Editor Ochieng. City?
What I was going to ask is, if you look at the way men and women relate in this day and age, I'll let the ladies speak for themselves, but even by my own experience, what I've observed is that women tend to be a lot more susceptible and willing to welcome change and the newness of things than men. So when you talk about modern times and modern men, the so-called modern man is not very different from their father or their grandfather. They just happen to live in a different time, but the way they go about their business, the way they think, any sense of modernity has to do with not just the practicability, but the usability of that particular moment. But the fundamental thinking is still very traditional. My thoughts. Ladies, what are your thoughts?
I do feel, though there's those that are still very rigid, who don't accept that women can be leaders, because that is our African culture. Women are not supposed to be in the leadership profile.
Now, leadership here, you're referring to political leadership.
Both.
Because are you saying that many men are not willing to let women be leaders in their own homes?
Are we saying that women are not leaders?
In their own home?
Yeah,
In the home. So when you put leadership in the home situation, the man in both African and the Christian culture, the man is the head of the house or the head of the home.
Okay.
But
So we must differentiate two things.
Yes.
You cannot put leadership in marriage. Leadership cannot come in marriage.
Okay.
In the marriage consent, this is quite different. We are talking about leadership and marriage. Those are two different fields.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
But I don't know, what do you think?
For me, I just want to agree with you because I come from a very cultured community. And most of the time, because of the cultures, and before I come to the cultures, I want to speak about capitalism system that has really affected our mental and how we think, and even how we act today. Long time ago, during colonization period, you'll find that what the white man brought, plus our cultures that we had, was so retrogressive to a black woman. And when the white man left, our men adopted the same cultures of making women to be slaves. And at some point, I want to agree with her. When we speak about marriage, it's so different with leadership. But also I want to acknowledge men who have, because I've seen men like Barack Obama, I've been following different men, and I've saw the leadership and the support they've given their partners. But the reality is, most of the time with the African cultures, plus the ideology of capitalism, has made women to be slaves in the community, in marriage today. As much as you're working or you are not working, you need to do house chores, you need to do a lot.
Exactly.
And when your husband comes, you treat them like a king. But
Yeah.
most of the men don't want to treat their wives as
The
queen.
same way.
These are conversations that we need to speak about them. But at the same time, we have intergenerational gap. At the same way my father used to think is the same way, I want to agree with you at some point, my brother used to think. Because my brother was so, when he got married, he was so abusive until we chip in and said, no, you are not going to beat your wife. Sisi ndo tutakushika. Kwa sababu we are with you, you are seeing what we are advocating, we are ending gender-based violence, and you are a perpetrator within our home. And my father used to happen in previous years, it used to be like that. So all these practices that are retrogressive, my brother brought from my father. So when we are looking at intergenerational gap and the modern world, it is true women are adopting into change so faster and so quickly, and men have been resistant. Because even
Why?
me and my partner sometimes we fight because of leadership. Ananiambia, hizo feminism yako usinilete kwa nyumba. You know, it feels so sad because now when you're speaking, like, unaongea kama nani? I'm the man in this house. I'm like, I don't want even to take your position. I agree you are a man.
But
and
let me
I'm a
ask you
woman.
this question. Eric put across a certain postulation and said, those early formative years children spend with their mothers. So these both boys and girls. So who do you think inculcates this idea? Let's talk about men for a moment. The idea that the man is the man in a traditional sense and that the woman is the woman in the traditional sense. Who is it who inculcates that idea?
I do feel we must also be very careful when sensitizing this issue of women, because if women also get it very wrong, it can cause a lot of havoc to marriages also. Because that's why I say those are two things that must be separated. Marriage does not work through the field of learning through books and freedom fighting and whatever. Marriage is an agreement between two people, and normally how two people make it is not the same way.
Is it really?
Exactly.
But we are saying, but we've said the opposite just a few minutes ago.
Yes,
we are
no.
saying that the same mindset that you have in your home is the same mindset that folks are now bringing out and applying to things like how
Sometimes,
you choose your leader.
why I'm saying this, you'll find one marriage, maybe the man is not a hyper, is a cool person. Another marriage, you'll find the opposite. The man is a hyper. So you cannot treat the two situations in the same way. If you take the lessons from outside, so normally the marriages won't work. Another thing, when we come to maybe desensitizing our women and girls and also the boys, actually it's right. The mothers has more time with the children in the house those days, not now.
Why?
Now you realize the mother works most of the time. She also arrives late in the house the same way the father does. So initially, it used to be the woman will have more time in the house because she never used to work. But
True,
right now,
but even now,
yes,
when the two man and woman,
Yes.
father and mother, get home,
yes.
who is it that's giving more attention to the children?
Mother.
I can't say nowadays it's even mother. Most of the time, it is even there are times when men are supposed to be rushing home to oversee activities in the home
Are
because
supposed to be.
Yes.
But what is the situation right now?
The situation right now, you realize there's so much controversy in working because two people leave the house to go and supplement the budget to the house. So this is an initiative that now has to be done with both parents, not even the woman alone. Because initially, those years, women used to have more time with their children. But currently, as we talk, you realize sometimes in some situation,
Okay.
women have even lesser time with
Actually,
their children.
The women in a traditional setting had more time because
Yes.
the activities were centered around the
The
home.
home, yes.
Yes, they rarely went out.
Yes.
So, and children grew up in the home.
Yes.
Even if they went to the farm, it was in the vicinity,
Of-
for example,
the
of
home.
the home.
Of your
yes,
home,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And in terms of leadership with women, even in that traditional setting, one could argue that many African traditional norms, the roles were definitive. You knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But within those roles, women were in charge.
Yep.
Yes.
So there are things men never got involved. They said, no, that we do not get
Preserve
involved
of
in.
you.
Especially things like even touching poultry in the home. Men were not involved.
Okay,
Those
so
were
I think if we're looking at this, and maybe we can jump in here, Ednah, also. Look, what we are saying essentially is that this breaking the bias, these biases that we see on a regular, whether it is in the home,
Yeah.
whether it is in positions of leadership, etc., it all has to do with a mental shift. It has to be behavior
Exactly,
change. It's
exactly.
not going to be that you're going to take a mallet and go hit somebody over the head and say change from tomorrow.
No.
It has to be a consistent change of the way in which we
gradual.
think, right?
Yes, yeah.
But we're also saying at the same time that women who we are asking for these things to change, bringing up future generations, are the ones who are spending most times and unfortunately are compounding and compacting these biases.
Yeah.
Because of the way you bring up boys, the way you bring up girls,
Yeah.
you're still fitting them into this traditional role.
Very true.
So how can that change if women are contributing to the compaction of this same problem? How can it change, Ednah?
So for me, from a local setup, from a local setup, I want to say a woman still spends a lot of time with their children, plus also working outside. Because if you come in Kibera, you'll find most of the time men are idle, especially the younger, under 30. Men are not working, but these young women are working, feeding their families. Men will be out, not taking care of the children, but kusimama tuko kwa barabara. But these young women are working, coming back home so late, and again, getting also doing some house chores and also attending to their children. That is happening in the local community. So most of the time, the children will be raised by both parents, but most of the time the children will be raised by their mothers inside the home. That has a mother, father, and children. And children will adapt to whatever the mother is taking them through, teaching them like that. And they will, this one will also impact to their behavior and their attitude, how they think. But at the same time, here we need to speak about culture. I want to speak about religion. Religion is one of the aspects that so many people fear to speak about. A woman goes to church. A church is already a setup. For example, a Catholic church, every priest is a man. So when they're discussing the agenda, they cannot discuss women agenda. They discuss men agenda because every priest is a man. When they're seated on a round table, what are they discussing apart from men agenda? When you go to mosque, and here we are speaking about we want to shift attitudes. How do we shift attitudes when men are still praying by themselves on Friday? When still men are still sitting on the table? This is religion. Kenya is a religious country. Women get some of these behavior, some of the attitude from the preaching. And you know, sometimes even the Bible plus the Quran has really given men, has made men to be so powerful than women. That is a reality. But now when you want to unpack religion, again, as an African black woman, you will be told, you don't touch there. Because the reality, somewhere, in that there is something that is missing in this space, that as women, when we want to break the bias, we need to speak about, we need to unpack religion, we need to unpack culture. In my culture, men sits and decides, and when they decide, they bring a woman, and this woman will ensure that ile kitu wanaume wamesema huko juu imepitishwa kwa generation. It was a man idea to kusema kwa Masai Land hawatatengeneza manyumba. Nyinyi wanaume wake, you will go outside there, fetch for water, you will do poultry work, you're going to do a lot of work looking for cattle, and you'll come back home kutengeneza hii nyumba. You get? And these men, what they've done, they were really strategic, and the patriarchal culture is so established, rich with wisdom, finances, and so much. So these men manipulate system in a way that you can never see it. And let me tell you, I agree also, we have women who are misogynists, women who don't understand there is need of supporting other women. Because in that space, wanapata zile keki kubwa kubwa. Mwanaume atakuja na keki kubwa, atakula quarter, akupe 3/4. Kama mwanamke, utampenda, unaona. Hautajua wakati anakumanipulate, hautajua anakumanipulate aje, ile agenda yake yenye alikuinstilia upitishe kwa mwanamke mwingine. So we need to unpack these things so well, because gender equality globally, it's not going to help women alone. It's going to help men and women plus our children and any other person who identifies differently. Because right now we're speaking about breaking the biases, but we're here speaking about women and men. What about that person who identifies differently? What about the intersex person? How do they think about breaking the bias? Where do we place them in all these matters of gender equality in our community today?
I strongly wish to maybe say something quite different, because we also need to embrace the change that where we have come from as an African country. And I strongly feel if you look at the part of religion, I think religion, they have tried to be a little bit more flexible in the way they were. If not, we will not even be having a Muslim as a president in Tanzania. We also need to appreciate where the bias has been let go at a point. Men have also left their pride. We also must congratulate them for that. If you go to also most churches right now in Kenya, you realize if there's so many pastors who are women, and there's so many followers there who are men. So what I strongly believe is us as a country, we should put in more effort in trying to educate our people to accept and realize that the times have changed. Situations also have changed. Women have also got education, have been empowered in different ways, and we give them an opportunity to serve at different levels. And this will begin by us parents in the house, by making sure that when we treat our children in the house, we treat them in an equal way. For them to understand, it begins from our home where we stay. Let them, the boys in the home realize their sisters also can get equal opportunities as them. Because if we don't do it from our home, it also becomes very difficult to try and doing it outside, when they haven't seen their parents doing the same thing in their home.
Have you considered that probably the resistance is actually just inherent resistance? It's not necessarily resistance. It is just a continuation of what people believe is right.
Yeah.
And where I'm heading with this is when we talk about all these things, the rights and the gender rights, gender conversation, the patriarchal cultural practices versus modern day practices. Whose practices are we basically discussing? Are we discussing our own practices and saying let's identify those that are still working within this time and those that are not? Or are we trying to impose 100% somebody else's culture?
We cannot, as Africans, I believe we should not totally just drop our culture, because there's also a part of our sense of belonging. As African people, we have our culture that we also cannot drop.
But
we cannot drop our language.
My question to you
is,
are there, if you sit back,
is
there a list of things that you see in your culture and say, this one's good, this one's need to go?
Exactly.
And not just practices, but entire culture, beliefs, everything.
Very true.
These ones are good, these ones need to go.
Exactly. I have. Because...
and is it universal? From the next woman in your culture, are you in agreement?
Or is this a solo mission?
And
not really.
The men also in your culture, is there some universality in terms of
very true, because
this is good, we need to retain it?
Their cultures as Africans, we cannot drop. And if we do drop, we will lose our identity as the African people. For example, we cannot just wake up also and decide we want to change everything and behave like the Western people. We are not Western. We are Africans. The food we eat, the way we treat our visitors, African culture, we are supposed to host our visitors in a friendly way. Our language, we cannot drop our language because we want to change everything.
Gender roles?
That's where we come. Gender roles, like men now have to realize those days they never used to work, but now they should be taught how to cook, how to clean. Because
there's a culture where men never used to work.
No. Why am I saying this? There's a culture where men don't touch anything. House.
Where? Okay, I'm saying in the home.
In the home, they don't wash. They don't cook. Now, when this young man comes to Nairobi here to get some work from the village, he's supposed to wash by himself and cook. So those are the cultures we need to stop.
You know exactly what
Yeah,
you've
they're not
just-
positive.
Do you know what you've just said?
Yes.
Young men who come from Delhi to Nairobi
Yes.
get married quickly because they realize
Exactly.
they need someone to wash their clothes for
Exactly.
them.
Those cultures, there are cultures now we must accept that they have been overtaken by time.
Have they really?
Yes.
That's really the question I was asking.
They have.
Have they?
Have
Yes,
they? Are
they
we? Are we trying to impose somebody else's culture on our cultures, and they are clashing?
There are those ones that, for
This is a
example,
generational conversation.
So for me, from my
Daktari,
side-
I'm
So,
sure, even you,
yes.
editor, I'm sure the conversation that you're having today is a
Yes.
conversation that has been had beyond your generation.
Yeah.
And yet we are still stuck there. And that's why I said maybe it is not a resistance.
situation. Let me tell you. You know, there was a time whereby you didn't need to come from your area to come and look for a job in Nairobi. As a man, you only needed to have your cattle. That was a sign of richness. The animals, and that was all. There was no education to make you maybe leave come to this studio here, and there were no serious things like this one that we are seeing right now. But right now, you must accept that this change, and this change is forcing us to drop some of our hard lines. Like the culture of men not cooking can now not continue. The culture of men not agreeing that women now have come out to be the same competitors on the same field. We compete for same jobs. We go for same interviews, same classes. That was not there previously. So that's why some of our hard lines on the cultures we used to have now have to drop. And people should agree that women and men at most of the things we do in life, we must agree that women cannot no longer be treated as a sideline. They must be treated in the same way men are being treated.
You know that
because
Terry-
we go to the same class,
Yeah.
we go to the same school, we board the same matatu coming to jobs. We do all our things together. So we must accept that things have changed, situation and times have changed, and even religion has changed, and agree that women now can be preachers. That is the same way even people should agree that women must now take their position as leaders. The same way churches have agreed and allowed women to serve as pastors.
Ednah, what do you think?
For me, I'll say we have imposed cultures, and I'll go back to religion. It's a very difficult topic, and religion has controlled Africans, how we think, how we behave. Because yes, we want to retain some of our cultures, but again, we need to sit down as African community and learn from the previous experiences, pushing it forward to progressive cultures. For me right now, when I sit in different meetings and in my community, I would just advocate for progressive cultures. Depends with where an individual comes from, because we have different cultures. And yes, African was united according to the history until colonization period, during all these processes. And now we started also acting as Western, even how we talk, even the English that we use. So again, we have a lot of things because we adopted even the clothes. Because if you're speaking about retaining our cultures, hizi hazikuwa nguo zetu, si ni kweli? Na sasa pia tunataka kuslay. So we have a lot of discussion to speak about, so that at least we can fit in. Because right now, we are not even fitting in. Unaona? We are not, like, we are trying our best, but we are not, because we've forgotten a lot of things. And if there is something that we need to speak about today, we need to speak about resources, because there is that culture that we have scarcity of resources in Africa that is intentional, it is deliberate. That's why Africans, we are poor, and most of the time tuko kwa war. Because when people are taking our minerals away from us, when people are taking our resources from us, and we don't have anything for ourselves, then also they're imposing so much to us. They are imposing things like war. Because when you don't have resources, kama uko Kibira tunanga maji, maji ni expensive. Kuja asubuhi kwa line ya maji, women are fighting. Because if I don't fetch that water, then I cannot sustain my family, because water
It affects the rest of your day.
Exactly.
Editor, thank you very much for joining us. Editor Ocheng is a youth community leader, feminist, and activist. And she's been with us alongside Dr. Agoy Lois Faith, a HR professional. Dr. Faith, now you can tell us, you want to vie for political seat this year?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what seat?
I'm an aspirant for Women Rep Kakamega County.
Right.
Yes.
Is it the first time that you're throwing your hat in the ring?
Yes.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations for taking that step.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us again. Happy Women's Day. And as you continue having these conversations on breaking the barrier and just breaking the bias, pushing these conversations and all, let's not fear. Let's not step back. Let's express ourselves. Because, only in talking are we able to discuss these matters, are we able to arrive at some common ground, or even just move the needle.